Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for waiting a minute or two with our just a regular technical Zoom challenges. Thank you so much for joining me. My name is Huzafa Hamid. I am the Manager of Education and Communications with the Leslie Group, and welcome to our Retirement Readiness Webinar. So today's webinar is really about that decumulation stage. So most of what we present is talking about how to set up group retirement plans, how to contribute into them, what the contribution formula is, setting up investment lineups, etc., to grow people's savings, and so on. Now, at some point, you're going to look at those savings as you've been working in your, going through your working lives for some decades, and say, okay, well, how do I take those lump sums, whether it's in a pension plan or an RRSP or a DPSP and so on, and then convert that to income? What are some of the products I should be looking at? What are some of the key ages? How do government savings fit into that, CPP and OAS and so on? So really, that's what today's webinar is about. What do we do at the back end to convert those savings into income? So the first question I get asked most often by members is, how much do I need in retirement? And that's probably the most obvious question. So we'll start at that point. What is it that I need in retirement? Now, there's no magic number. There's no specific dollar amount, but because, it depends on things like how much, where do you want to live in retirement, the type of lifestyle you want, how long you want to be retired for, and so on. But to give you some context, most Canadian retirees are living comfortably in retirement at around 65% of their full-time income. Now, there is a range around that. So 65% is about the average, but the range around that is between 50% and 80%. So 50% at the low end and 80% at the high end. But around 2/3 of your full-time income is what you typically need to have a meaningful and a comfortable retirement where you can kind of maintain the same lifestyle you had when you were working full-time. Now, the first question you might have when you look at that percentage is, why is it a lot less than 100%? And the reason is that when you reach retirement, you have a bunch of costs that are often paid off, so that your expenses won't be the same as you are when you're working full-time. So you have some expenses that will stay the same, some expenses that will increase, and some that will decrease. So let's take a look at those expenses. So in terms of steady expenses, you have a whole bunch of expenses that will stay the same. So you have things like groceries, utilities, clothing, vehicle, property costs. So generally speaking, when you're in retirement, your groceries are about the same. You have the same type of, your utility costs, they don't change. Your clothing costs, I'll put a question mark on that because, excuse me, because your clothing, well, we're in COVID land at the moment, so there's definitely been a change in what people wear. But when you retire, you typically have less work clothes, depending on the type of industry you're in. And even for vehicle, you may, if you're a couple, you may go from 2 vehicles to 1 vehicle because one or both of you may not have to commute to work. But generally, the cost of vehicles, the cost of clothing, they stay about the same. And your property costs, your property maintenance, etc. So you have a bunch of expenses in retirement that stay the same. Now, in terms of decreasing expenses, this is really where you get your savings in retirement. So first of all, in retirement, you're generally making less income than when you're working full-time. So you pay less in terms of income tax. A higher portion of your income is in a lower tax bracket. You're not in retirement, you're not paying CPP and EI contributions. Very importantly, in retirement, you're not saving for retirement itself. So if you're putting in 4% or 6%, or even 10 or 12% of your income from your pay into retirement products like a pension plan or RRSP, those you won't have in retirement. Now, when you reach retirement, on average in Canada, about 75% of people have paid off their entire mortgage by the time they reach 65 years old. Now, if you haven't paid off your entire mortgage, you've probably paid off a very good chunk of it. But on average, you probably paid off a very good chunk of it, or your entire mortgage. Now, a big cost is children. as I know. But you know, when you reach 65, the chances are your kids are grown up, or they're somewhat grown up, as the theory goes, and those costs of raising children, especially when they're young, you know, books and strollers and education and sports activities and clothing and so on. You know, many of you might know this is a pretty endless list. Those costs tend to start to dissipate when you approach retirement, and any costs associated with just getting in and out of work. I was having a conversation with my sister the other day, and she was telling me how much she spent, how much she's not spending when she's not, you know, she's taking vacation time or working from home, just the cost of commuting, the cost of eating out, etc. So that's really where you get a good chunk of your savings in retirement. I'm just going to stop my video for a second. I'm just going to adjust one thing. Okay. So you have a bunch of costs that go down in retirement. Now, you do have some costs that go up in retirement. You have the three big categories are entertainment, travel, and healthcare. Now, if you've now those are very much lifestyle costs. So if you have the nice thing about those costs is that you can really control what they are. You know, you can choose a type of entertainment, you know, you do in retirement. You can choose where to travel and so on. Healthcare is something that kind of picks up in the middle or towards the end of your retirement. Now, you may not have any specific health issues, but there may be things that you do just to make your life a bit more comfortable as you approach retirement. But the two big things are things that you might decide to go into some kind of assisted living or nursing home or long-term care facility, and you need to plan for those kind of increased expenses. So that's off. These are typically how your expenses change in retirement. But that middle block that you see, the decreasing expenses, that's where you see a good chunk of savings when you eventually retire. Now, when you get towards retirement, oops, sorry about this, my mouse is acting up. So when you get towards retirement, you've got to start thinking about what are some of your key ages. So what are some of the key ages you have to think about when you eventually retire? Now, 55 is the earliest age you can take money from any locked-in assets that you might have. So locked in means things like pension plans, defined contribution pension plans, locked-in retirement account or LIRRs, defined benefit plans, etc. So the earliest age you can take money out from those type of locked-in assets are 55 years old. That does not include things like RRSP. So an RRSP, it is a tax-deferred vehicle. You do save income tax when you put money, or you defer your income taxes when you put money into an RRSP, but it's not a locked-in asset. So there's no floor. You can take money out of an RRSP earlier than 55 if you wish. Now, the latest you must start converting registered assets, so things like pension plans, RRSPs, locked-in retirement accounts, is by the age of 71. So the CRA stipulates that the year that you turn 71, the December of that year, you must convert pension plans, RRSPs, and LIRRs into some kind of an income vehicle. So we'll talk about what those income vehicles are later on in the presentation. So you have this kind of age range between 55 and 71, or earlier if it's for things like RRSPs, to start taking money out for retirement. It doesn't have to coincide with when exactly you might retire, or when you take things like Canada Pension Plan and Old Age Security. So let's talk about those two products now. So 65 is the normal CPP and OAS age. Now, when I say normal, it means you can take it, you can take CPP and OAS at that age, CPP without it being reduced. Now, you can take CPP as early as 60, but for every year you take it earlier than 65, you'll get a reduced CPP amount. The latest age you can take CPP and OAS is 70. And if you defer it to 70, and we'll go through some of the numbers, you'll get an increase in your CPP and OAS. So those are some of the key ages to consider when you're looking at when to retire. So what happens at retirement? How do you get your income at retirement? Now, when you're working full time, you typically have a primary source of income. You have a single paycheck, and that paycheck will pay for your, pay all your bills, your lifestyle, etc. You might have a second source of income. You might have a side hustle going on, but most people, they have a majority or a primary source of income. Now, that equation, when you retire, kind of flips on its head. You have, at retirement, you don't have a single source of income. You have multiple sources of income that will pay for your retirement lifestyle. Now, those sources of income, they fall into three main categories. You've got personal savings, you've got government plans, and then you've got workplace savings plans. So those are your three big categories. So we're going to look at government plans and then your work savings plans as we go through the presentation. So how do you take those plans and convert them to income? So how do you take your workplace savings plans or any personal savings, etc., and actually convert them to income? So here I want to introduce three main types of accounts or products that you have in Canada that allow you to take things like RRSPs, pension plans, and convert them into income. So you have something called a LIF or life income fund. You have a RRIF or registered retirement income fund, and you have something called an annuity, which is a guaranteed pension. So let's look at LIF first. So what's a LIF or a life income fund? So the idea with a LIF is that it is for locked in retirement savings, mainly DCPPs or defined contribution pension plans. So as we saw in a few slides ago, you can take DCPP money and you can take it by the age of 71. By the age of 71, you've got to convert pension plan money into one of the things you can convert them into is a LIF. So the idea with a LIF is when you've got a pension plan, you're putting money into a pension plan. With a LIF, you're taking money out of a pension plan. Now, so you take your balance from a pension plan, you put it into a life income fund, and the assets remain invested. And then you take money out of the pension, out of the LIF rather, to draw an income at retirement. Now, the key feature, if your assets remain invested, it means that there is market risk with a LIF. Depending on how you invest it, you might keep it as cash, you might put it into some kind of a balance fund or an equity fund or a bond fund, etc. But there will be market risk. Obviously, if there's cash, there's going to be inflation risk. If it's an equity fund, there's going to be some investment risk along the way. So what that also means is because the assets remain invested, it means it's not going to be guaranteed for the rest of your life. Depending on how you invest and how you take money out, you can outlive the value of your savings. Now, when you've got money in a LIF, there are some minimum and maximum percentage withdrawal rules, and those percentages are based on your age. So those percentages, then they are CRA numbers. So they're not from your carrier. So it's not, for example, Sun Life or Canada Life or Manulife or Industrial Alliance telling you, okay, this is the minimum maximum percentage, or your employer. It'll be the CRA saying, okay, at this age, this is the minimum percentage you've got to take out from a LIF, and this is the maximum you can take out. So that means you can't take it all out as cash. Every year there's a maximum percentage you can take out. So looking at that's the LIF. So looking at now RRIF, Registered Retirement Income Fund. So this is really for RRSP money. So DCPP money would go into a LIF, RRSP money would go into a RRIF. And again, by the age of 71, you have to take your RRSP money and convert that into a Registered Retirement Income Fund. So similar to a LIF, apologies for all these financial acronyms, but similar to a LIF, a RRIF, the assets remain invested. So RRSPs, you're generally putting money into an RRSP. You can take money out directly from an RRSP, but for a RRIF, it's really designed for those withdrawals. It's now you're taking an income stream in retirement. Again, the assets remain invested. That means there's market risk. And because there's market risk, that means you may outlive the value of your savings. It may not last your entire life. If you do have a balance in your life income fund or your registered retirement income fund, so your RRIF or your LIF, if you have a balance in there when you pass away, that balance can go to your beneficiaries. It's not clawed back by your old employer or by the CRA or anything like that. It's you simply just pass it down to your beneficiaries. But again, you'll figure out how much in your RRIF to put in. So you'll figure out how long your RRIF will last, depending on how much you withdraw and how you're investing that money. So with a RRIF, there is just a minimum percentage you have to withdraw, again, based on your age. It'll be the CRA that lets you know what that minimum percentage is. It won't be, again, your employer or your carrier, for example, the Sun Life, Manulife, Canada Life. So that's a RRIF. So just looking at the LIF and RRIF withdrawals, they vary in percentage from province to province. I've just put Ontario on here, but it's similar if you're in a different province. So just every year, there's a minimum percentage for your age, or for every age, there's a minimum percentage. But I'm going to put some key ages down here, age 60, 65, and 71. So let's say you start taking money out of a LIF at the age of 60. Every year, you have to take out 3 1/3%. So if you have, for example, $100,000, 3 1/3% of that is about $3,300. So every year you must take out as a minimum approximately $3,300, and the maximum is 6.85%. So again, on every $100,000 is $6,850. So you've got that band to decide how much to take out that year. So that's set every January the 1st. So January the 1st, your provider, whoever's providing your LIF, will look at your balance. Let's say it's exactly $100,000. So they'll stipulate, okay, you have to take out between $3,300 and $6,850 that year from your LIF. Or if it's a RRIF, it's a minimum of $3,300, but there's no maximum for the RRIF. Okay, for 65, you can see the percentage goes up to 4%, the minimum. Age 71, the minimum percentage for your RRIF and your LIF goes up to just over 5.25%. And you can see the maximums on the right for your life income fund for your LIF. Eventually, when you turn 89, the maximum goes up to 100% for your life income fund. So the Canadian government is essentially saying, okay, congratulations, you've hit 89. You can now take out as much as you want from your life income fund. Okay, so that was a LIF and a RRIF. Now let's look at an annuity. So with a life income fund and a registered retirement income fund, the markets, they remain invested. But with an annuity, it's slightly different. You don't remain, the money doesn't remain invested. So let's define what an annuity is. So annuity is a contract that's issued by a life insurance company. So that's the first thing, that's the definition of annuity. Now, it's a fixed sum of money that's paid to someone each year, typically for the rest of their life. So this is what makes an annuity different from a RRIF or a LIF. With a RRIF or a LIF, the money remains invested, you withdraw, you may outlive your savings, you might have a balance at the end. Here, you now have a contract with a life insurance company, and they'll pay you the money, they'll pay you an income stream for the rest of your life, regardless of how long you live. So just looking at the flow chart again, if you've got an annuity, any assets can go into an annuity. So you can purchase an annuity from your RRSP, from your pension plan, even a TFSA, cash under your mattress. You can take money and you can use that to purchase this contract or this annuity. And out the other side comes a guaranteed pension. So that'll be guaranteed for the rest of your life. Now, the key thing with an annuity is it's a one-way street. You're not drawing down on a balance. You're taking whatever dollars you had and that you used to purchase an annuity, and you're converting it now to that guaranteed pension. So you're not putting it into a pot where you're drawing down a balance. Now you're just taking that dollars and then you're converting it. So you can't go back to your insurance provider and say, well, okay, look, I'm 3 years into annuity. Is there a balance? Can I convert it back to a pot? I want more flexibility. No, that's it. Now it's a one-way street. So that's how an annuity works. It's very different. It's a very different animal from a pension plan or a RRIF or a LIF product. Now, what affects the annuity rates? What are some of the factors that affect the annuity rate? So age when payment starts. So the younger you are, that you decide, if you start an annuity at, say, the age of 60 versus 65, the 60-year-old would have a lower annuity amount because it's got to be paid out longer. Gender also affects your annuity because women live longer than men. So when your insurance provider calculates how much you should get as an annuity, they'll take gender into account. You can build in a spousal benefit into your annuity. So you could say something like, okay, if I pass away before my spouse is still living, they can get 60% of my annuity. And if you build in a spousal benefit, that will change the annuity amount, the income that you receive. You can build in a cost of living adjustment. So for example, you can say your annuity rate goes up every year with inflation. That's quite an expensive option for annuity. So not many people get a cost of living adjustment built into the annuity, but it is something you can factor for. You can also put in a guarantee period. This is quite useful because let's say you purchase an annuity at the age of 65 and you think to yourself, okay, well, I'm going to, I think I'm going to live 20, 30 years. However, you pass away 3 years later, you may feel, okay, the risk of that's a tremendous waste of money. So you can build in something like a 5-year guarantee period or a 10-year guarantee period, where if you pass away, say within 10 years, let's say you pass away in 7 years, with the remainder 3 years, it will get paid, the annuity will be paid out the full amount to whoever you nominate as a beneficiary. Lastly, interest rates. So this is one of the bigger factors that have affected annuity rates over the last couple of decades. So when insurance providers are making the calculations, okay, how much would this $100,000, $250,000 convert into an annuity based on your age and gender? They'll take interest rates into account to make that calculation. Now, a decade or two ago, which maybe a couple of decades ago, when interest rates were near double digits, annuity rates were much higher. So typically when interest rates are higher, annuity rates are higher. As interest rates have gone down from high single digits to low single digits to near 0% at one point, the value of annuities fell greatly. So annuities aren't as popular as they were, say, a generation ago. They're still available, but maybe 1 or 2 people out of every 10 are choosing to purchase an annuity, and about 8 or 9 people out of 10 are choosing to purchase a RRIF or convert their pension plan, I should say, or RSP savings into either a RRIF or a LIF. It's not mutually exclusive. You can take some of your pension plan money and use it to put into LIF, and you can take the remainder to put it into annuity. I'm being asked questions here. What happens to what's left in the annuity when you pass away? Okay, so I don't know when this question came in, but I'll speak to it again. So let's say you have $100,000 and you convert that into an annuity. Now, you're essentially taking $100,000 and you're converting it into an income stream. So, or you're swapping it. I think that's probably the most accurate word to use. You're taking your $100,000 and you're swapping it into an income stream. So there isn't a pot that's left over. You can build in a guarantee period, for example, that your annuity will be paid out if you pass away within a certain number of years, or you can have a spousal benefit, but there isn't anything that's kind of left over because you're just taking the risk and you're saying, okay, look, I think it's more value just to guarantee. What you're getting with an annuity is a guarantee. So with a LIF or a RRIF, you're getting a lot more flexibility. With an annuity, you're swapping that flexibility for a guarantee. So people will honestly, they look to see how long they look at their own health. They'll look to see how long maybe their parents or their other family have lived, and say, well, if you think you're going to break records and live to 117, hey, I think an annuity is great value. But if you've got poor health and you think, look, I don't think I want to make it much past my mid-70s, you may feel that a LIF or a RRIF is better value for you. A couple more questions. Cheryl, with increasing life expectancies, how do you recommend people prepare for those later years when LIF or RRIF funds need to be used by age 89? Jay's answered that question, and we're going to expand on that question later on in the presentation as well. All right, so let's look at government benefits in retirement. Now, the two big government benefits are Canada Pension Plan and CPP. So we'll start by looking at Canada Pension Plan. So Canada Pension Plan is based on how long and how much a person has paid in CPP contributions. So as you probably know, with every paycheck starting in January, you start paying CPP contributions. And when you reach your CPP age, whatever age you decide to take CPP, the Canadian government or the CRA will look to see how much you paid in that CPP and for how long you paid those CPP contributions. And from that, they'll use a formula and they'll determine what your CPP benefit will be. In fact, look at the best 37 years worth of CPP contributions. Now, you pay CPP contributions when you're working for between $3,500, that's when it starts, to what's known as your YMPE, or years maximum pensionable earnings. Now that number changes every year, but for 2022, that number is almost $65,000, so $64,900. So that's where you pay your CPP contributions. Now, your normal CPP age is 65. You can take CPP as early as 60, but if you take it earlier, it's decreased by 0.6% every month that you take it early. So on an annual basis, that works out to 7.2%. So let's say you take your CPP at 63, that's 14.4% reduction in your CPP. And that's a lifetime reduction. That's not just a reduction up until 65 where it reverts back to normal. It's a lifetime reduction. So yes, you're getting it for those extra years, but you'll get a reduction on the CPP for the rest of your life. Now, if you decide to defer it or you take it later, you'll get an increase in your CPP. It's a 0.7% increase. It works out to 8.4% per year, 16.8%. Let's say if you take it at 67, it'll be a 16.8% increase in your CPP. And when you so when you're thinking about, okay, when should I take my CPP? You can kind of factor in with your earnings as well. Now, for most people, they're not going to be retiring. If you were to go back a couple of generations, retirement was a hard line in the sand. You know, you'd typically retire at the age of your 65th birthday. When you're 65 years and 1 day old, you'd be fully retired. You know, you go to HR, get your gold watch or whatever it is they're giving, and you'd be fully retired. Retirement now is much more of a soft landing. People tend to kind of ease into retirement. They'll either do some contract work, reduce the hours, reduce the number of days, and you can kind of tie your CPP into that. So if you think, well, okay, I'm going to be fully retired, I'm going to start retiring around 63, 64, but fully retire at 66, 67 years old, you can defer your CPP if you want, and then, you know, enjoy that increase in payment as well. Okay, let's have a look at some of the questions that are coming in. Andre, there is an adjustment. So what happens if I opt to start collecting CPP age 62, but continue to work and expect to work until 70? So Andre, there is an adjustment for that. I don't remember, and Jay can probably answer this actually in the chat window, but there will be a CPP, the CRA will make an adjustment to your CPP contributions because you're starting to collect CPP. It's a very vague answer, but essentially what I'm trying to say is
that's right. So essentially, if you're taking that amount early at 62, I mean, the one thing to factor in though is that amount would be income. So if you're still working and you're getting CPP income, that means that you're probably potentially in a higher tax bracket. So that would be the biggest consideration oftentimes when you're taking CPP and work at the same time. But the normal decreases that you're seeing here in terms of pension plan is what you'd see applied. But again, the bigger consideration there, if you're continuing to work, is the fact that you're paying taxation at your marginal rate because the CPP income is considered income. So a lot of people defer that to after that point so that they're not paying the same marginal rate on that amount.
Thanks, Jay. Okay, old age security. So old age security is calculated completely independently of CPP. Your CPP won't affect your OAS and vice versa. So CPP is based on, you know, your CPP contributions. It's really a reflection of your work history. OAS is based on how long you've been a resident in Canada between the ages of 18 and 65. So that's a 47-year period. So you'll get the maximum old age security when you've hit 40 years of residency. So for OAS, importantly, it doesn't matter how long you've worked, how much you've earned, how much you paid in taxes. None of those things are taken into account. OAS is really based on how long you've been here in Canada, either as a citizen or as a resident. You have to have at least 10 years in Canada to qualify for your OAS. Now, 65 is the normal old age security age, just like CPP. You can't take it earlier like CPP, but you can defer it. You can defer it all the way up to 70. And if you defer it, you get a 0.6% per month increase. That works out to 7.2% a year. It's, again, as the math is pretty simple, but if you defer it to 67, it works out to 14.4% a year, a 14.4% increase in your OAS, lifetime increase in your OAS payments. So that's old age security. So what do the numbers look like in terms of how much you can get from OAS and CPP? So these are the 2021 maximum numbers. So for Canada Pension Plan, the maximum in 2021 is just over $1,200 a month, and it works out to about $14,500 a year. Now that's a maximum you can take CPP, and that maximum, you'll get that maximum if you pay CPP at the maximum rate for the best 37 years worth of your work history. So now for many people, even high earners, that may not be the case, because you typically need to get out of school, for example, you start working, your income isn't as high as in the middle of your career or later on in the career. So remember that your CPP is going to be based on that, on a decent period of your earnings history. So that's a maximum. But to give you some, and the important thing is really to look at your own CPP, look at your own Contact Service Canada, look at your CPP contribution and benefit statement to get an idea what your own CPP looks like. But just to give you, again, just a little bit of context here, the average, on average, a retiree who's collecting CPP is taking about $620 a month, or which works out to about $7,500 a year. So if you've assumed, look, I've been working all my life, I'm going to make the assumption I'm going to take, I've been working my whole adult life, and make the assumption that I'm going to get maximum CPP. And instead you're getting, that may not be the case because you may not have been contributing at the highest rate, say earlier on in your career. And instead you're getting closer to the average CPP. That's about a $600 a month shortfall in your budgeting. So that's going to have a big impact in terms of what you might expect to be able to do in retirement. So take that into account. I'd say if you're within 8 to 10 years of retirement, start looking at your CPP benefit statements from Service Canada, and that will give you a more accurate picture of what you can expect in CPP. Old age security, the maximum is $615 a month, and that works out to about $7,400 a year in OAS. Now you add the two up, the total, assuming you get the max OAS. So again, I'm just going to repeat something. To get the maximum old age security, of course, you have to have been in Canada as a resident or citizen for that 40-year period. So let's say you get somewhere near the max CPP and the max OAS. In the total potential maximum you can get is about $1,800 a month, which works out to about $21,800 and a bit of change in CPP and OAS maximum. Now, both of those are taxable income. So consider that gross income, and you just pay regular income tax on your CPP and OAS. Now, here we're seeing 2021 numbers. You may be retiring in 10 years or 15 years or 20 years from now. So both CPP and OAS are indexed to inflation. So these numbers will go up every year, at least in line with inflation. So you can take these numbers today and you can use them for retirement planning in terms of purchasing power. Now, there's a bit of small print I'm going to put at the bottom of the screen. There's something called old age security clawback. So what happens is once your net income, so your after-tax income, is around just over $80,000, your old age security will start to come down. Honestly, it's not a big deal. If you're earning, say, 80, 90, even $100,000 of in net income in retirement, after-tax income in retirement, you start seeing your old age security slope down. A couple of $100 here or there, it's really not going to bother you at those income levels. Probably, I'd say, it's probably something to aim for rather than something to be worried about. Okay, so now there's also something called GIS, Guaranteed Income Supplement. Now, this is less known, but the idea with Guaranteed Income Supplement is that if your income in retirement falls below a certain level, the Canadian government will kind of kick in this thing called GIS and supplement your income. So really, it's really designed to keep you above the poverty line, make sure you can get your groceries, keep your lights on, and so on. Now, to qualify for OAS, you have to qualify for GIS, Guaranteed Income Supplement, you have to be receiving old age security. So it's not designed for pre-retirement. It's purely once you're retired and once you're receiving OAS, then you might be eligible for Guaranteed Income Supplement. It's again a very different animal from Canada Pension Plan and Old Age Security. CPP and OAS are taxable. This is a non-taxable benefit. Now with CPP and OAS, you apply for them. With GIS, you don't apply for it. What happens is when you file your taxes in retirement every year, if your income is below a certain level, Guaranteed Income Supplement will automatically kick in. Just to give you an idea of what that looks like in terms of those income thresholds, they're pretty low. So if you're a single person, you're taking OAS and your income in total with OAS, CPP, everything combined is less than $18,240 a year, then Guaranteed Income Supplement will kick in. And there you can see the numbers. If you're married and your spouse is receiving OAS and you're married and your spouse isn't receiving your OAS, and so on, you've got the income thresholds there. If you want to figure out your own CPP and OAS information, you can get it from Service Canada. I've taken these details directly from Canada.ca. So you can just log into your My Service Canada account through Canada.ca. You can call Service Canada Monday to Friday. There's a toll-free number, 1-800 number, and you can visit a Service Canada office. If you're living in a big city like me and you're visiting a Service Canada office, I'd say take a book or take a fully charged phone that you can listen to something or listen to a podcast. There are some proper lines going on at the moment. Okay. At the beginning, we said, okay, how much do I need in retirement? Another big question is, how long will my money last? There's two factors that affect how long your money will last. One of those factors is how much you withdraw, what percentage you take out of your savings, say from your LIF or your RRIF. This is assuming that you're not getting an annuity. How much you take out as a percentage of your savings every year, and then the investment returns on your savings. So typically, you're not going to just leave your $50,000 or $250,000 or $500,000 worth of retirement savings just as cash. You typically invest them, even if it's in a low risk fund. Those are the two factors that affect how long your money will last. So between each of those two variables, you can pretty much get a number down in terms of number of years your money will last. So I put a table up here to demonstrate. So we'll just look at one of those numbers. So for example, if you're taking out 6% of your savings every year from your RSP or your RRIF or your LIF, and your money's growing at an average of 5% a year in investment gains, your money will last approximately 36 years. I haven't got the source for this table. I just want to thank Sun Life. Sun Life provided this table to me. All right, so it's November. It's every November for the last 7 or 8 years, maybe 10 years, has been Financial Literacy Month here in Canada. And when we're looking for tools and services in terms of trying to plan our finances, I think one of the most overlooked areas is Canada.ca's Money and Finances page. So when you go to Canada.ca, you'll see a link on the homepage called Money and Finances. Now, if you click that link, you can go to Financial Tools and Calculators. Click that, and there'll be a bunch of calculators, and one of them is the retirement income calculator. Now, there are lots of retirement planners, retirement calculators out there. All of the big carriers will have one. So Sun Life has one when you log into your mysunlife.ca account. Manulife has one. They've got retirement steps. Canada Life has SmartPath Now, for example, smartpathnow.com. Industrial Alliance has a calculator built into their platform. You have your financial advisor will have one, your bank will have one, and so on. There's a lot of products out there. This is sincerely the best version of a retirement income calculator that I've seen. So this is what it looks like when it's filled in. I've just done a mock version. So somebody born January 1970. It will give you a life expectancy, but you can change that. Your gender, your annual retirement income goal. You can set your current annual income. I've just used some round numbers here. You can either enter your CPP or it'll assume a CPP amount for you. You can put in the value of your retirement savings, your employer pension plans, even the how much your employer and you are contributing in dollar terms, old age security. You can either assume that you're going to get 40 years in Canada, or you can adjust it if you're, let's say you're a newer immigrant like me. When I reach 65, I'm going to have 27 years as a resident in Canada. So my OAS is going to be less than, say, somebody like my spouse. She's lived in Canada her whole life. So I always joke that's why I married her. She's got full OAS. So I married rich. So you have, you fill in those variables, you get the results down, and you can keep going back. You can save the report, you can print the report, and so on. And you can play with it. It's one of the clearest calculators that I've seen. And you scroll down on the calculator, it will break it down for you year by year, how much income you'll receive. This is the Canada.ca money and finances page. So we focus on the retirement income calculator. There's a budget planner there. There's a mortgage calculator, a bank account comparison tool where you can compare bank account interest rates, monthly fees, something for your vehicle lease. There's a financial literacy self-assessment quiz. That's really interesting. It gives you an idea about where you are in terms of your financial literacy, how much you think you might know about money versus what you really know, your perception versus your reality. Financial goals calculator, a mortgage qualifier, credit card comparison tool, and a credit card payment calculator. So there's a whole bunch of tools all in one place in the money and finances section and the calculator section of Canada.ca. Okay, so back in about 5 years ago, Sun Life Financial conducted a survey of Canadian retirees, and they asked these Canadian retirees, what would you tell your younger self, or what would you tell people who are working today in terms of prepping for retirement? So they came out, they asked that they conducted this survey, and they came out with the top 10 tips. I'm going to run through each one. So tip number 10, don't retire until your debts are paid off. Now, you may still have a mortgage or somewhat of a mortgage when you eventually retire, but I'd certainly say for things like high interest debts, credit card debts, maybe a vehicle finance, anything like that, try to get those paid off before you eventually retire. Number 9, I'm preaching to the converted here, become financially literate. So think about, I think it's a good idea to have a financial planner or a financial advisor, but make sure you understand their reasoning, understand where, so you can question their assumptions, and that you understand why they're putting the plan together that they're suggesting. Number 8, plan how you'll spend your time. I got a semi-taste of retirement. So back in 2010, I moved to Canada. I had a 10-12 month period where I had to wait for my residency to come through. And in that period, I didn't have children at the time. I couldn't work. There's a lot of things you can't do. I was here on a visitor's visa, so you couldn't work. I couldn't, you can't sign a bank account or get a car and things like that. So I was kind of just in this spot where I was feeling a sense of I wasn't retired. I knew eventually I'll start working again, but I had that taste of what retirement might look like. And one of the interesting things I found was in the first couple of weeks, or the first month or 6 weeks, it was a lot of fun. Like it was a real sense of freedom. But after that, I inherited a camera, a proper SLR camera. I walked around taking pictures of the streets. I went through the Starbucks menu. It was different than it was back home in England, but then it got boring. And then I was like, okay, maybe I should read some books and so on. But my biggest regret looking back at that time is that period was I didn't plan how I was going to spend my time. I didn't structure it. That's probably one of the things I go back and change in my life. So, when you're looking at retirement, it's as much psychological, how you'll stimulate yourself, how you get meaning out of it, as it is financial. Number 7, don't leave money on the table. Maximize your employer match. If you've got a workplace plan, put spare savings in things like TFSAs and just save taxes there and so on. Number 6, have a financial plan. I would change that to have a written, and underline the word written, financial plan. So have, when you go on vacation, you typically don't turn up to the airport and say, okay, well, where am I going to fly? Buy the ticket there and then. And when you get there, you think, where am I going to stay? What am I going to do here? You have some kind of, you get to the airport, you bought your tickets, you know where you're going to stay, you know why you're going, where you're going, you know the kinds of things you're going to do out there. You've got a plan for your vacation. Your retirement is essentially just one big long vacation. So think about how you want to plan that out and have some kind of a written plan. You don't have to go through a financial planner, but have some idea of how much you want in retirement, what the kind of lifestyle you want, what you're going to get from CPP and OAS, have some kind of a budget, etc. Number 5, develop interest to occupy yourself in retirement. This is very much like number 8, plan how you'll spend your time in retirement. Number 5, a colleague of mine in my last job, Paul, he would always say, think of retirement as a whole bunch of Saturdays strung together in a row. What do you enjoy doing? That's kind of what you might want your retirement to look like. And I've always used that I've always found that metaphor very useful in thinking about having any kind of a conversation about retirement. Number 4, write a will. It's give myself a water break here. You really want your loved ones to receive your assets in a way that makes sense to you in terms of your relationships with them. Firstly, and secondly, in the most cost-effective, expedient way. When you pass away, you want your loved ones to be able to receive your assets so they can go on and live their lives. So the best way of doing that, really the only way of guaranteeing that, is to write a will. You can pick up will kits. If you've got pretty straightforward, let's say you're a couple and you have 1 or 2 children, and you want to divide it 50%, and you know exactly what you want to do, you might just pick up a will kit, state it. If there are any complexities in your relationships, you probably want to go through somebody a lawyer who specializes in writing wills. They can walk you through the consequences of how you're splitting your assets. Number 3, live within your means. Just essentially have a budget. I mean, this is so basic that you could apply it to before you're working as well. Right now, when you're working, you typically want to live within your means, and same with retirement, you want to live within your means. Number 2, start saving or investing early. I can't see, you're not in the room with me, but regardless of where you are in terms of your age, if you can throw an extra bit of money into your savings, one of the things I like to do is I haven't lived by this every single year, but every year I try to increase how much I'm saving as a percentage of my pay by 1%. So if you start off at 4% next year, you might put an extra percent in your payroll, or set up a TFSA, or have a savings account, wherever it goes. I mean, you want it to be in the most tax beneficial way. I find payroll contributions are the most seamless way of saving. But wherever you are in your life, if you can start saving, start investing early, it's easy to do it early than try to catch up later on. When you do eventually reach retirement, you're going to find that about a half to 2/3 of your savings are going to come from those actual investment gains. So it's going to be about a third to half will be the actual cash value of what you saved, and the remainder will be the investment gain. So the earlier you can save, the earlier you can start investing those savings, and the longer you have for it to compound. Tip number 1 is take care of your health. It's a completely non-financial tip, but that was a top tip from Canadian retirees. So I want to leave you with a starting point, and the starting point in your journey for planning retirement is decide how much you want in retirement. I think it's a very simple question to ask, but it's a complicated question to answer. And it involve you taking a walk in the woods, sitting down with your spouse or your loved ones, figuring out what is it that you want to do in retirement. How do you want to live in your live in those retirement years? Where do you want to live? If you want to travel a lot, that's going to you're going to require more of an income than say that 65%. You're going to be closer to that 80% level. If you don't want to travel as much, if you're somebody who's more of a homebody, or you want to take writing classes or painting classes, that's going to adjust, your income should reflect that. So the step one is decide the type of lifestyle you want in retirement and decide how much you want in retirement. And that will give you a starting point for figuring out when you can retire, how much you need, the types of products you need, and so on. But once you've got that number, I'll just use some round numbers. Let's say you want 50,000 in retirement. You're going to, and step two would be calculate your CPP and OAS. Let's say you get 15,000 from Canada Pension Plan and OAS combined. So now you've got a window. You take that 15,000, subtract it from that 50,000 of your income goal at retirement. That leaves you with $35,000 window of income that you have to make up from your own sources, from your own savings. So that's a basic back of the envelope retirement plan. How much do you want? Remove CPP and OAS. What does that gap look like? Do your savings cover that gap for income at retirement? All right, that concludes our retirement readiness presentation. Firstly, apologies for the technical difficulties. I know we started a couple of minutes late, so thank you for your patience with that. I hope you've enjoyed the presentation. Reach out to us. We deliver a similar presentation to members as well. So if you think this would interest your staff or your members, particularly those that are kind of in the 10, 12-year corridor towards retirement, we can certainly deliver a presentation similar to this. Or if you have any questions about your group retirement needs. Thank you very much. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you, Josefa. And again, just to reiterate, we're going to be online here for some time just to answer any questions that you may have. So please stick around, ask any questions you may have. And again, thank you, Josefa, again for your presentation today.
No problem at all, Jay.